Transformation Tuesdays. I am your host, Christy Effelman with Edge Leadership, and today we are joined by my friend, an Edge grad, Kirk Bradley. Kirk, how many years has it been since your cohort? I should have asked you that before we started.
It's been about 3.
3? Yeah,
It's
3
it seems
years.
like COVID seems like sometimes 20 minutes and sometimes 10 years, right? So it's hard to calculate that.
Isn't that the truth? And Kirk and I met when he went through an all-male cohort pre-COVID times. We're just going to say in the pre-COVID times. And my friends joining us today, as a reminder, we have every single month, we are being joined by different storytellers. And the outcomes of this, 15, 20-minute conversation is really twofold. The first is to provide a powerful platform to share stories of transformation. And the second is to inspire you that you are not alone in your challenges. So please join us the second Tuesday of every month. We move the time on you a little bit because we always accommodate our storytellers and their schedules, and we like to keep you on your toes. You just know you're going to see us at some point the second Tuesday of the month. And to join us to be inspired by people who have challenged the status quo in their personal and their professional lives. And with that, I would love it. Please drop a note in the comments. Say hello to Mr. Kirk Bradley, although I may start calling him Kondo just for the sake of this conversation today. But Kirk, I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our listeners.
Absolutely. So, yeah, thank you, Christy. I really appreciate it. The Kondo is I harken back to my college years. That was a nickname given to me, or actually chosen in a Swahili class, believe it or not. That I took 2 years of Swahili at Indiana University, and that was the name I chose. And the interesting thing about that is the best friends I have in the world, um, 2 of them came out of that class. So 2 of
No
the few
way.
people that I still talk to from a long time ago are from that class. So they know me as Kondo, and so that's what I put up when I kind of started my own podcast not long ago. But
I love
anyway,
it. Please drop, if you think about it, Kirk, drop a note in the comments about your podcast so folks who want to learn more can.
sure, absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so again, as Christy said, I'm Kirk Bradley, and I grew up in Bloomington, Indiana. Lived my whole young life in Bloomington. Went to school there in Indiana and at Indiana University there in the town of Bloomington. And then after that, I was grew up in I was basically a single losing my train of thought. But I have 3 siblings,
Yep.
but I kind of grew up on my own with my parents because they're so much older than me.
I
So
was just going to say,
my
I remember this. They were so
yeah
much
my
older. You were the baby.
yeah I was very much a baby. My closest sibling is 15 years older than me. So my oldest sister graduated from high school. The week I was born, so my mom missed her high school graduation. She always kind of held that over my head. Yeah, so I kind of grew up in that regard in a very religious household.
Mhm.
Kind of born again Christian, church 3 times a week, which probably leads to a lot of the views that I hold about organized religion to this day. But anyway, after graduating from Indiana University, I moved to Chicago. Actually, Gary, to be more specific, to live with a friend of
No
mine
way.
who was working on the dock of a transportation company and asked me to come join him. So I lived in Gary, Indiana, when it was the murder capital of the nation for the year I was there. So that was interesting to say the least. But lived there for a year and then moved to the city, and then most of my professional life was in Chicago. So um, with FedEx, the same company that I'm with now, um, took a break, a little hiatus in the middle there after being taking my first senior manager role um, for about 4 years in Chicago. My wife basically convinced me to leave the company to be a stay-at-home dad. So when my daughter, who's now 14, when she was um, on the way, my wife kind of convinced me that I was married to my phone as much as I was to her. BlackBerry at the time, dating
I,
myself
I
there a little
remember
bit.
the Blackberry.
Um, yeah. So and that I was not going to know this human that was coming into our life very well. And so it was the best decision I ever made in my life. Stayed home with her for the first 2 years. and then went back to work for another company there in Chicago. Um, and then a couple years after that, a friend and colleague of mine who knew my story very well, knew my wife very well, got promoted to the director level, and asked if I would want to come back to the company. And so I made the move to the headquarters, to the Pittsburgh headquarters. So I guess one story that I can't leave out is when I was in Chicago, was kind of a dispatcher. Before I took my first management role, I talked every day to a young lady who was in the corporate headquarters who made a lot of the decisions on where we were moving things. And when I took my first management job, I had to fly to the corporate headquarters to interview. And when
Sure.
I interviewed, I met her in person, and I was never a believer of love at first sight before then. But from the moment I was introduced to her, I was way more concerned about the girl than I was the job. So I got the job, but continued to harass her in odd hours on the phone, and she was wondering why I kept calling her at work. Finally, got her to convince her to come out for a visit to Chicago. 2 years later, she moved. We got married, and kind of the rest is history. But yeah, 10 years ago, moved to Pittsburgh and have been here ever since.
I did not know that that was how you met your lovely wife.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. And for everyone listening, I mean, you are going to hear, I'm sure, lots of different stories today about how Kirk is a badass. His wife is too. Just saying, just putting it out there, which I'm sure does not surprise anyone at all. So, Kirk, let's jump right in. Tell us your story in your words. What was, whether it's personal or professional life, wherever you want to go today, head, heart, belly, whatever serves you. What tell us about what your life was like before your transformation, and then what shifted?
Yeah. So the first thing I have to say is transformation. That word, that's a powerful word, right? And and
And we shy away
in
from it, right? We think, oh, that's
oh,
way too big for me. I
and
can't own that. I'm not the kind of person who can transform anything.
let me just say, Christy, that imposter syndrome is real, right? Like you, when I got your message and you shot me a text and said, "Hey, would you like to be a part of this Transformation Tuesday
Yeah,
thing?" And you know what? I learned so much from you and value our friendship so much and your leadership and want to be a part of, like I said, your movement. And you could ask me to do just about anything, and I would have said yes before I even thought about it, right?
feelings
But after
mutual.
but after I said, yeah, Christy needs something. Absolutely. I'm in. And then a little while later, I started looking at the stuff and thinking about it and going, transfer, what's this transfer? I didn't train. I have no kind of transformation. Right. And so I kind it, like I said, it's not, transformation is not always this spectacular Steve Rogers turning into Captain America thing where you get zapped with a bunch of electricity and all of a sudden you're somebody new. Right. It's a subtle thing. And I actually had to think a lot about what the transformation was, and just recently realized that it was really more about how I approached the things that I was passionate about and let me set me on fire and got me out of bed in the morning, and
Yeah,
compared those to what I do in my day job, right? And realizing that one isn't necessarily an escape from the other, right? Well,
yeah,
that's kind of how I viewed it before. Like when I was doing these things, when I leaned into these like speaking engagements like this and DE and I events and things that I could go and be a part of, things in my personal life where, like we've talked about, I'm in a little recording studio that's actually in an office inside of the martial arts gym where I train. That stuff was always an escape to me. But what I realized more in through the cohort and kind of leaning into the things that make me who I am and that I'm really passionate about, like and it becomes part of who you are, and you can really integrate it. So that was really the biggest shift for me. I think I leaned in a lot, and I know I should quiz you and say what was my edge outcome, because you're supposed to know everybody's, right? But my my edge outcome that I came up with, everybody has to come up with something that you want to get out of this program, right? And mine was to not necessarily chase promotion. And I think
yeah.
that was a big shift too, right? Before it was like I had recently interviewed for a couple kind of director level positions that when I look back on it to this day, they weren't jobs that I necessarily wanted. It was the next step. You're the next one up. It's what you're supposed to do. It was working for someone who I very much respect and appreciate and is my mentor. So I felt like I should do it. Right. Great experience, went through it. But looking back on it now, knowing those jobs were not the right thing for me, and I really need to go after and live the stuff that I'm excited about. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that
you're
was the biggest shift
passionate.
for me.
Like that to me, I think is just, it's so powerful. And I just really want to underscore what you said there, Kirk, for everyone who's listening, because, I talk with so many people and, everyone's on whatever you want to call it, the ladder, the lattice, this ambition of, my life is going to be better when, right? My marriage is going to be better when my personal life, my professional life, whatever it is, it's these next things. And one of the things that I remember about our time together and your leadership in our cohort was, I remember watching you intentionally slow down and be in the moment of your life. And that's where, as a coach, that's where I was seeing the magic happen. When you gave yourself permission to take that outcome and say, you know what, that's not really my outcome right now. I don't really want to leave here and get promoted. Here's how I want to be. I want to be different.
Yeah.
So to that, what would you say looking back on it? And folks, please, as Kirk says, anything that resonates with you, or if you have a question, pop it in the comments, because we will circle back around to you after we close out here. But Kirk, I'd love to know from your perspective, like, what were 3 takeaways from your Edge experience? Like, and why were they so powerful?
So the first word that pops into my head, and it, again, back to the imposter syndrome thing, right, is courage. And there's an exercise that we did, and I don't know what you call it. You tell me the technical name. It's the circle, where everybody stands in a circle and faces each other and has 1 minute to give the first impression after, like, it was like our second
Yes,
together.
we're talking about personal brand. Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone, we knew each other a little bit, but weren't intimately familiar with each other at all. But it was like, from the experience we've had thus far, give your first impression of this person. Then you have 1 minute, and then they give you theirs, and then you move to the next person. So you get through everybody, right? And I was just amazed how many times I heard the word courage and bravery from people to me. And every time they said it, I was like, what's this person talking about? I'm terrified half the time, right? I don't know, like, where they're getting this, but I realized after going through that that's what people see in me, and some of the things that I'm doing and some of the things that I'm taking on, other people may look as something that they would never do. So I have to lean into that, right? If that's a benefit, if that's something that I can be part of my brand, great, right? And that's another thing that I've kind of moved forward with. And you talked about that cohort and the leaders in that room, and that was the other thing, another big thing I took away. If I can be a leader in this room, I can lead anywhere, right? I can. There's no group or venue or wherever where I can't stand up and be a leader, because that was a tremendous group of leaders, and so that was one. I would say the other is a huge one that you talk about all the time, and it's vulnerability, right? The power of vulnerability. My absolute favorite quote that you used several times was, vulnerability feels like fear but looks like courage, right? And so use the courage word again, and there's again another
No
um,
accidents.
moment. Yeah, another moment from that experience was the I am from exercise, where you gave us this hour to go sit by yourself and write these I am from statements that tell the story of your life, which was very, very personal and intimate. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody was doing it for themselves, right? And then we got back in the circle, and you were like, okay, who wants to share? And I was like, what is she talking about? Nobody's hearing this thing,
Who
right?
is this
You
lady
must,
again that I
you
just met
must,
a few
yeah,
hours ago? What is she asking
you
me to
must be
do?
absolutely crazy if you think I'm sharing this with anybody. But the amazing thing about it was, you went first, and then a few other people went. The first couple people that went, I remember, they kind of stayed on the surface and told kind of their story. You might read in a yearbook, or you might see in a resume, right? Which was fine. That's what that was,
Totally
where they
fine.
leaned into, right? But then one of our members of the cohort said he started to go, and he goes, "Okay, I'll go," and he had a lump in his throat, and
I remember
he
this.
went,
Okay.
man, and he started to talk, and then he looked down, and he went, man, this is hard,
Yes.
and and then he started, and that was that moment. I was like, all right, I can do this. I'm next, right? And after he went, then I went, and then and it was tough. Still reading that thing was one of the toughest things I ever read out loud, but it was amazing. And at that moment right there showed me, when you're your true self and you let people in, it can be huge. A tool can be very, very powerful for everybody involved. And then I would say, other than just that network, that bond of people that we developed,
Brotherhood,
the brotherhood, which still exists to
which
this day.
still exists to
Um,
this day.
and will continue to.
Yes, it will.
The other big powerful thing for me, and we've talked about this a lot, and probably the reason why you actually asked me to come here was the one-on-one career interviews, right? That seemed like, and to a lot of people treated that as a one-time thing where you
Yes,
go
it
in,
did.
you pick a leader that you want to talk to and get to know. Maybe it's a kind of window to a mentorship, something like that. But I got so much out of not just sitting down with an amazing leader and hearing his story and what he had to say, and learning, like, one, how easy it was to talk to him, but then when I was able to share that with not only the cohort but kind of people on my team and some other people, I got so much out of that, and other people were inspired by it. And I actually had someone on my team say to me one time, "Man, it would be really cool because if you could, like, share some of these conversations with, like, a larger audience." And
I remember this.
that turned into me thinking about how do I do this, and kind of convincing my boss to take over an engagement meeting that we had in our auditorium, and creating these kind of, call it FaceTime, right? The face,
Mhm.
that's the nickname, right? The face. So
Yeah, we have Condo, but folks, his nickname in my book is the face. I'm just saying. So FaceTime with the face. That's what you're
right.
getting.
Right. So FaceTime became an opportunity to sit down with some of our the leadership team, and I did it first with my mentor.
Yeah.
He was the first guest, and I didn't ask him one question about work, no question about strategy or anything like that. It was all about what makes you tick, what do you like to do on the weekends, what bands do you like, all that stuff. Got such great feedback, and everybody loved it, and they got it kind of. It's the goal to give that spark, give that one thing that you have in common with that amazing leader that you never thought of as just a person who has the same challenges that you do, right? And
Right.
then working with um, Men Leading Inclusively, which is an organization that was started by the first all male cohort. Right, I
Yes.
was part of the second one, but the first one, their gift back to the company was to create this ERG, Men Leading Inclusively. So I got involved with Ian Painter. Shout out to Ian, who's my partner in
Shout
crime
out
with
to
that.
Ian.
And we've, over the last year, have done these events where we let different ERGs within the company, Black Professional Network, Hispanic Action Network, Women Leading Change, all these different networks that are so amazing. They come on, and some of their leads give up a presentation and talk about why they're so excited about their ERG.
No,
And
I know
then
you guys were
I
doing this.
and then I take one of the executive sponsors and do one of those FaceTime interviews. And we've done, I think, 9 of those so far. And as a result, like, again, I'm sure I found value and get so much feedback from not only the people that hear it, but several times some of these senior executives have said to me, people have approached me about and asked me a question or started a conversation about some race I ran or some band I listened to because they heard that interview, and maybe they never would have had the courage to talk to me or start that conversation before, and that was their end, right? So it's just a really really cool thing that we continue to do, and now I've done them so often that I've kind of become like leaning into that face thing, like I'm the guy. People know, like, if you need
Yes.
somebody to moderate an executive panel or whatever, that you come ask me because it's something that I really enjoy and have found a passion for, and it's not my day job, right?
No,
So
sir.
back to that shift, like, it's part of who I am and what I do in my brand, and it just makes life better.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, like, there's so many things that I just want to underscore and call out. This concept, and all the edge grads out there are going to be familiar with those one-on-one career interviews. And I love that, Kirk, that was something that spoke to you authentically, and that you continued and amplified in so many ways, not just for yourself and your team, but for the whole organization. And it circles back around to vulnerability, right? Like, what
Yeah,
everything that I heard you saying, even down to the employee that never felt like they could approach that executive and have a conversation, had an authentic connection point because of the interview that you had that showed that that leader was not just a leader. They were a whole person, and they had things that they did for fun, and they had favorite bands, and they had all of these things. And I think now more than ever, where we are in the world, where our organizations are, like, that's what we need more of. It's that being seen as whole people. So powerful to me.
yeah.
It's so stinking powerful to me. All right, my friend, we are running out of time. I can't even believe it. If you could share one piece of advice from your transformation journey, what's that one piece of advice? What would you share?
So I got to give you two, but they'll be quick, right?
All right,
One is the sticker, right? The sticker you give us the first day of
all
be
in, baby.
all in. And I use that hashtag to this day on all kinds of stuff. Like if you can be all in from the beginning and just open yourself up and be there, you get huge rewards. So that's number one. That's kind of overrides everything. And the last one is one that's kind of become, I guess, really, and I talked about it in the speech on the last day, and it's really leaning into what's uncomfortable, right? I talked about my friend and coach and mentor that runs the gym where I am right now. For a little shout out to Kama Worthy, former UFC
Give that
fighter,
shout out.
still at it, still going strong. Who
Right,
I've kind of cornered him in some fights, and if you've heard any screams or sounds like any dying behind me at any time during this interview, it was probably him or somebody that he was being not so nice to in the next room. But anyway, um, leaning into what makes you uncomfortable, and not just what makes you uncomfortable, but terrifies you, right? And this is me today, putting my money where my mouth is, because like I said, when I first thought about this, I was like, I don't have any kind of transformation. I am an imposter, right? And all these people are going to figure it out when I get on the mic, right? So that's it, man. It's anytime that I am afraid of something, that goes for um, life. That goes for at home. It goes for in the gym when I'm doing jujitsu and I'm against a Division I wrestler that's literally half my age. It's go in, go all in. They go together pretty well.
Go
And
all in and do it scared.
you can do that, and you can do your dream job while doing your actual job. People say if you find what you love, you don't work a day in your life. You don't have to go look for that job, right? Do it as part of what you do every day. That's it.
That's it. That's it. So, one last thing, because my intuition is telling me that I can't close just yet. Because something that has come up multiple times in today's conversation is this concept of imposter syndrome. And I had a conversation just last week, Kirk, with a whole group of women. And one of the women, raised her hand and said, you know what, this is just so unique to women. Men are so lucky that they don't have to deal with imposter syndrome. And I said, oh, my friend, let's talk. And I would love, if she asked you that question right now, and perhaps she's even listening, what answer would you give her? How would you share? What would you share about that?
That men don't deal with imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that there's this perception that only women deal with imposter syndrome. So the fact that you've brought it up 3 times in today's conversation, and the fact that I just had that conversation last week, makes me think there's no accidents, Kirk.
Oh, absolutely not. I'd give her the same look that I gave you when you asked me to share that where I'm from thing, right? Like it's crazy because it comes up. I said it 3 times because it comes up all the time. It's come up in every position that I've ever held, especially when you first go into it and you're not familiar with everything, and maybe you're not the expert. Maybe the people that are working for you are the experts. I have that situation now. I have an amazing team of data professionals and project managers and advisors. None of these jobs, first time in my career that I've ever led a team that I have no idea how to do the jobs of the people underneath me.
It's terrifying,
right?
Isn't it?
It's absolutely terrifying.
I have that. I get
it. But it's so rewarding. Being able to give people that autonomy and trusting them to do their jobs, and just I bet I always boil like my job as a leader down to just a few things: select the right people, give them the tools to do the job, make sure they understand what their job is, and then work as hard as you can to get rid of barriers, right? To get them out of the way, and then help them get wherever they want to go in their career, right? So, and I can do that without having to know how to do your job. And it actually makes me more effective because I'm not looking over your shoulder trying to do what you did better, right? So, but back to kind of the imposter syndrome thing. Not only do I have it all the time, and other people that I speak to that all happen to be men that I'm talking about right now, but a lot of those senior executives that I have these conversations with have told stories about, and I bring it up. That's one of the questions I usually asked in those interviews. Like, are you familiar with the concept? And I frame it up as, are you familiar with the concept of imposter syndrome? Have you ever heard of it? Have you ever experienced anything like this? And to a person, they all say absolutely, right? They tell their story about when they felt like they were out of their league. And these are some of the most amazing leaders I've ever seen that feel like, you look at them and you're like, that person never struggles, right? They've got everything together. So, you never know what anybody else is dealing with. You never know what anybody else is struggling with. But I will say, yeah, imposter syndrome is a real thing.
Yes. Thank you for that, my friend. It is not associated with femininity. It is not associated with masculinity, which, by the way, is a paradigm. It is associated with humanity.
Yeah.
And anytime we are a beginner at something new, anytime we are doing something scared, we are going to come face to face with it. And the invitation that we have, that I am taking out of here right now with Kirk Bradley, the face on this interview with us, is to do it anyway. Do it scared. So with that, my friends, it is time to close out. Any final thoughts that you want to leave us with, my friend, before I do?
Just thank you so much. I appreciate, like I said, you've got quite a movement going, and I'm happy to do anything I can to be a part of it. And yeah, I'm all in.
All in, baby. I am proud to continue to be in your orbit. And my friends, as I close us out, remember that today, now more than ever, we need leaders willing to change the status quo, both in our personal and professional lives. And as I hope we did today, inspire you to do the same. Onward, my friends. The future is bright. So long. See you real soon.